Hello guys, welcome to Ben 10 What Ifs. So in this video, we will see, what if Ben 10 was sent to attack on Titanverse with Proto-Omnitrix? If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Blank. Chapter 1. Collision of Worlds. The Proto-Omnitrix sparked against Ben's wrist, sending electric blue pulses up his arm. Something had gone wrong. Catastrophically wrong. One moment he'd been fighting Drive, Onimo's latest monstrosity as Heat Blast, the next moment the device had begun to malfunction, emitting a high-pitched whine that made his teeth ache. Come on, don't do this to me now. Ben hissed through clenched teeth, slapping at the watch face as the world began to blur around him. The forest outside Bellwood stretched and distorted like melting wax. Colors inverted, reality fractured, and Ben felt his molecules being pulled apart and reassembled in rapid succession. His stomach lurched violently as the universe itself seemed to fold around him. A blinding green flash consumed his vision. And then, nothing. Consciousness returned with the roar of screams. Ben's eyes snapped open to chaos incarnate. Massive humanoid figures lumbered through unfamiliar streets. Buildings, medieval-looking structures with wooden beams and stone foundations, lay crushed beneath enormous footsteps. People ran in terror, their faces contorted in primal fear. He lay sprawled on cobblestone, the Proto-Omnitrix still sputtering and flashing on his wrist, cycling randomly through alien silhouettes before settling on a dull red glow. Whatever dimensional rift it had created had completely drained its power. What the hell? Ben muttered, pushing himself to his feet, wobbling slightly as blood rushed from his head. His eyes widened as he got his first clear look at the monstrosities terrorizing this strange place. They were humanoid but wrong in every conceivable way. Disproportionate limbs, heads too large or too small, skin stretched taut over muscular frames, with vacant eyes and grotesque smiles. And they were enormous, ranging from 3 to 15 meters tall. One of them, a 7-meter class with a potbelly and tiny arms, snatched a screaming woman from T. He ground and bit her in half with casual indifference. Ben's stomach heaved at the sight, but instinct overrode his horror. He slammed his palm against the Omnitrix, but the device only sputtered pathetically. Its hourglass symbol pulsing weakly. Damn it, not now. He slapped it again, harder this time. Come on, I need XLR8, 4 arms, anyone. A shadow fell over him. One of the giant humanoids, these couldn't possibly be aliens. Could they? Had noticed him. Its face, frozen in a rictus grin, tilted curiously as it reached down with alarming speed. Ben rolled, narrowly avoiding the massive fingers. The movement seemed to wake the Omnitrix, which suddenly flared green. Finally, without hesitation, Ben slammed his hand down on the device. Familiar energy coursed through him as his DNA temporarily rewrote itself. His skin hardened and turned red, his body grew massively, and 4 powerful arms erupted from his torso. 4 arms. The Tetraman roared, just as the creature made another grab for him. This time, Ben caught the giant's wrist between his upper arms while his lower pair delivered a devastating punch to the creature's face. The impact sent the monster reeling backward, crashing into a half-demolished building. Ben's temporary triumph was cut short by an unexpected sight, humans swinging through the air on what appeared to be grappling hooks and gas-propelled gear. They wore brown jackets and white pants with complex harnesses, wielding strange swords as they flew between buildings with astonishing agility. One of them, a young woman with black hair and a red scarf, executed a perfect spinning attack that severed the nape of a monster's neck with surgical precision. The creature collapsed immediately, steam rising from its wound. So that's their weakness, Ben muttered, watching as more uniformed soldiers engaged the giants. 3 of the creatures converged on a group of civilians cowering against a wall. The soldiers wouldn't reach them in time. Ben's 4 eyes narrowed in determination as he charged forward, leaping into the air with his powerful Tetraman muscles. He crashed into the first creature like a meteor, driving it into the ground with bone-crushing force. Get those people out of here, he shouted at the stunned soldiers who had paused midair to stare at him. Ben didn't wait for a response. The second creature was already reaching for him. And he met its grasp with all four arms, grappling with the monstrosity in a show of strength. To his surprise, despite four arms' incredible power, the creature matched him. Its vacant eyes showed no intelligence. Yet its grip tightened relentlessly. What are these things made of? Ben growled, muscles straining as he fought to gain leverage. A flash of movement caught his attention as someone zipped past, blades gleaming. The creature's nape exploded in a spray of blood and steam, and its grip immediately slackened. As it collapsed, Ben caught a glimpse of his unexpected ally, a woman with messy brown hair pulled into a ponytail, wearing glasses and a maniacal grin that seemed completely out of place in the middle of a massacre. That was amazing, she shouted, landing on a nearby RO of top and staring at Ben with eyes wide with scientific fascination. What kind of titan are you? How do you maintain cognition? How can you speak? Are you a variant like Eren? I don't have time for 20 questions, lady. Ben called back, already engaging the third creature. Just tell me how to take these things down. Cut the nape, she yelled, making a slicing motion across the back of her own neck. Deep enough to sever the spinal connection. Ben nodded, then delivered a devastating uppercut to the third creature's jaw, sending it staggering backward. Seizing the opportunity, he leapt onto its back and, with all four arms working in concert, tore through the nape of its neck with his bare hands. The creature crumpled beneath him, steam rising from the wound. The Omnitrix chose that moment to time out. In a flash of green light, Ben returned to his human form, falling from the dissolving corpse onto the hard cobblestones below. He rolled to absorb the impact, coming up in a defensive stance as the soldiers landed around him, blades drawn and expressions wary. Identify yourself, commanded a short man with cold eyes and an undercut. Despite his stature, he radiated deadly competence. His blades still dripping with steaming blood. Ben Tennyson, he answered, straightening but keeping his hands visible. Look, I know this is going to sound crazy, but I'm not from wherever this is. My device malfunctioned and sent me here. Device. The woman with glasses pushed forward, eyes immediately zeroing in on the Omnitrix. You mean that thing on your wrist? It allows you to transform into a titan at will. Not whatever you called it. An alien. I can transform into different alien species. This was met with blank stares. You know, extraterrestrials. Beings from other planets. The black-haired woman with the red scarf stepped forward, her expression unreadable. He's delirious. The shock from the battle. I'm not delirious, Ben interrupted. Look, wherever I am. Those things are attacking people, and I can help. Or I could if my watch would recharge faster. The short man's eyes narrowed. We're taking him to Commander Irwin. If he can transform at will without injuring himself, he's potentially more valuable than Eren. Captain Levi, are you sure that's wise? Asked a blond young man with intelligent eyes. No, Levi replied flatly. But we're running out of options. And I'm not about to ignore a potential weapon against the Titans. The woman with glasses approached Ben, her scientific curiosity palpable. I'm Section Commander Hange Zoe. That transformation was absolutely fascinating. Does it hurt? How much control do you maintain? Can you do it again right now so I can observe more closely? Hange. Levi's voice cut through her enthusiasm like a blade. Save it for later. We're still in the middle of a Titan incursion. Right, she agreed, though her eyes never left Ben. But you, she pointed at him, you and I are going to have a long, detailed conversation very soon. A distant rumble drew their attention. More of the creatures, Titans, they called them, were approaching from the south, at least a dozen of them bearing toward the breach in what Ben now realized was an enormous wall. The civilians haven't finished evacuating, the black-haired woman said, her calm voice belying the tension in her posture. Ben looked down at the Omnitrix. The hourglass symbol was still red, not yet recharged. How long until I can help again? He wondered aloud. If you're not lying about being able to help, Levi said, then prove it. Otherwise, you're just another civilian we need to evacuate. Ben's eyes narrowed. I've been saving the world since I was 10 years old. I don't need to prove anything to you. In case you haven't noticed. Levi replied coldly, this isn't whatever world you claim to be from. Here, everyone has to prove their worth. The tension was broken by a shout from above. Abnormal approaching from the east. It's moving fast toward the evacuation point. Mikasa, Armin, Levi barked, redirect to intercept. Hange, with me. As they prepared to launch with their strange gear, Ben felt the familiar tingle of the Omnitrix reactivating. He looked down to see the hourglass symbol glowing green once more. Wait, he called. I can help now. Levi paused, giving Ben a measuring look. Then help. But if you get in our way or turn out to be a threat, I'll cut you down myself. Without waiting for a response, the soldiers launched into the air, propelled by bursts of gas and guided by grappling hooks that embedded in walls and rooftops with uncanny precision. Their movements were almost balletic in their coordination, a deadly dance among the urban canyons. Ben studied the Omnitrix. A Teaver interdimensional jump he'd made had messed with its functionality. The holographic display looked different, showing only a limited selection of his usual transformations. Beggars can't be choosers, he muttered. Selecting one of the available aliens. He slammed his palm down on the watch face and felt the familiar rush of transformation energy. His body elongated and thinned, arms stretching to disproportionate lengths. Skin turning black with green circuitry patterns. His head tapered to a point, green eyes glowing from an expressionless face. Upgrade. Ben called out, his voice now with a slight electronic echo. Not what I was going for, but I can work with this. He scanned the battlefield, quickly analyzing the strange gear the soldiers used. The galvanic mechamorph's natura, affinity for technology gave him immediate insights into its function, a mobility system using gas propulsion and grappling hooks, combined with ultra-hard steel blades designed specifically to cut through Titan flesh. Ben spotted a damaged set of gear lying beside a fallen soldier, their body partially crushed beneath rubble. With a silent apology, he flowed over to the equipment and merged with it. His liquid metal form engulfing and enhancing the technology. The upgraded ODM gear separated from the harness, its components reconfiguring as Ben's consciousness merged with the machinery. The gas canisters expanded, developing more efficient propulsion systems. The grappling hooks became more aerodynamic, with programmable trajectories and enhanced tensile strength. The blades transformed INTO monomolecular cutting edges that could extend and retract at will. The newly enhanced gear attached to Ben's elongated mechamorph body, and he launched himself into the air with a burst of precision-controlled gas. The sensation was exhilarating as he swung between buildings with far greater speed and control than the human soldiers could manage. He spotted the abnormal Titan they had mentio. Ned, a 15-meter class moving with unnatural speed and coordination, charging directly toward a bottleneck where civilians were being evacuated through an inner gate. Unlike the others, this one's movements seemed almost purposeful. Ben calculated his trajectory and launched himself directly into the Titan's path, extending his arms to impossible lengths to wrap around the creature's legs. The Titan stumbled, crashing into a building rather than reaching the evacuation point. As it struggled to rise, Ben reconfigured his body, flowing up the Titan's massive form like living liquid metal. He remembered what Hange had said about their weakness and formed his arm into a massive blade, slicing deep into the nape of the Titan's neck with mechanical precision. The creature collapsed, steam rising from its dissolving form as Ben detached, reconfiguring back into his mechamorph shape with the enhanced ODM gear integrated into his body. He spotted Mikasa, the black-haired woman with the red scarf, staring at him from a nearby rooftop, her expression a mixture of shock and calculating assessment. Beside her, the blond young man, Armin, looked both terrified and fascinated. "What are you?" Mikasa asked as Ben landed nearby. "Like I said, I'm Ben Tennyson. I transform into aliens. This one's called Upgrade. He can merge with an enhanced technology." Ben gestured to the modified ODM gear now integrated with his body. "That's impossible," Armin murmured, though his tone suggested he was already reconsidering what was possible. "Says the people fighting naked giants with grappling hooks and swords," Ben replied dryly. A massive explosion from the south interrupted their conversation. Ben turned to see a different kind of Titan emerging from a cloud of steam, this one with exposed musculature and a skeletal face locked in a grimace. "Eren," Mikasa whispered, her stoic expression cracking for just a moment to reveal relief. "Wait, that's a person?" Ben asked incredulously. "Yes, Armin confirmed. Eren Yeager, our friend. He can transform into a Titan while maintaining his human consciousness. So I'm not the only shapeshifter around here, Ben mused, watching as the muscular Titan engaged 3 others in combat. Fighting with practiced martial arts rather than the mindless aggression of the normal Titans. The Omnitrix symbol on Ben's chest began to flash red, a warning that his transformation would soon time out. I need to make this count, he muttered, launching himself toward a cluster of Titans that had cornered a squad of soldiers. Moving with mechanical precision, Ben sliced through the napes of 2 Titans in quick succession, his enhanced blades cutting through their flesh with minimal resistance. As the third turned toward him, the Omnitrix finally timed out, leaving Ben in human form in midair. Oh man, not again. He yelped as gravity reasserted its hold. Before he could fall far, something caught him, or rather, someone. The woman with glasses, Hange, had swung in and grabbed him around the waist, her momentum carrying them both to a nearby roof. That was incredible, she exclaimed, her eyes practically sparkling with excitement. You turned into some kind of living metal creature. And you enhanced the ODM gear beyond anything we've ever developed. Do you have any idea what this could mean for humanity's technological advancement? I'd be happy. Why to discuss it when we're not in immediate danger of being eaten, Ben replied, checking the Omnitrix again. It was still red, he'd need more time before he could transform again. Hange adjusted her glasses, seeming almost disappointed at having to focus on survival rather than scientific inquiry. Fair point. Stay here until your device recharges. You'll be safer on the rooftops. I don't do staying safe when people are in danger. Ben countered, already scanning for another set of ODM gear he might be able to use normally. Hange studied him for a moment, then grinned. You know, I think I like you, Ben Tennyson. Here, she detached a spare set of blades from her equipment. These won't do you much good without the mobility gear, but it's better than nothing if a Titan gets too close. Ben accepted the blades, testing their weight and balance. They were heavier than they looked, and clearly designed for a specific cutting technique rather than conventional combat. Thanks. Any advice on how to use these effectively? Don't try without proper training and gear, she said bluntly. But if you must, aim for the nape, cut deep, and don't get caught. With that, she launched herself back into the battle, whooping with almost inappropriate enthusiasm as she spun through the air toward her next target. Left alone on the rooftop, Ben surveyed the chaos below. The soldiers, the scout regiment, he'd gathered from snippets of conversation, fought with impressive skill considering their technological limitations. Yet for every Titan they brought down, more seemed to pour through the breached wall. The muscular Titan, Eren, was making a difference, fighting with intelligence and purpose. But even he was being gradually overwhelmed by sheer numbers. Ben looked down at the Omnitrix again, willing it to recharge faster. Come on, come on. I need to get back in there. A shadow fell over him, and Ben spun to find himself face to face with a 7-meter Titan that had climbed up the building behind him. Its grotesque face split in a mindless grin as it reached for him with surprising speed. Ben dove between its legs, rolling across the rooftop and coming up in a defensive stance, blades at the ready. The Titan turned clumsily, nearly losing its balance on the sloped roof. I really hope these things are as effective as they look, Ben muttered, gripping the blades tighter. The Titan lunged again. Ben sidestepped, slashing at its outstretched arm more by instinct than technique. The blade bit deep, steam erupting from the wound, but the creature showed no sign of pain or hesitation. Right, central nervous system in the nape, Ben reminded himself, looking for any opportunity to get behind the creature. The roof offered limited mobility, and without ODM gear, he didn't simply swing around it like the scout regiment soldiers. The Titan advanced again, and this time Ben had nowhere to dodge. He braced himself, blades crossed defensively, knowing they'd provide minimal protection against the creature's overwhelming strength. Just as the Titan reached for him, a blur of motion interrupted its attack. A young woman with blonde hair tied back in a bun landed on the Titan's shoulder. Her expression coldly efficient as she sliced through its nape with practiced ease. The creature collapsed, nearly taking Ben with it as the roof partially gave way beneath its weight. The woman landed gracefully on what remained of the rooftop, her blue eyes assessing Ben with clinical detachment. "You shouldn't be here without gear," she said, her voice as expressionless as her face. "Wasn't exactly my choice," Ben replied, regaining his balance. "Thanks for the save. I'm Ben." "Annie," she replied simply, not bothering to ask who he was or what he was doing on a rooftop in the middle of a Titan attack. "Get to the evacuation point if you want to live." Before Ben could respond, she had already launched herself away, her movements precise and economical compared to Ange's exuberant style or Mikasa's fluid grace. The Omnitrix finally beeped, its hourglass symbol turning green once more. Ben immediately activated it, cycling through the limited available aliens. Quote, "Let's try something with a bit more mobility this time," he murmured, selecting one of the silhouettes and slamming his palm down on the watch face. Green light engulfed him as his body transformed, growing taller and more muscular. Skin hardening into red exoskeleton, insectoid wings sprouting from his back. "Jetray," Ben called out, though his voice came out deeper and more guttural than the Amphibian's usual tone. He looked down at himself in confusion. What the? This isn't right. He had transformed into something between Jetray and 4 arms, a crimson-skinned humanoid with 4 powerful arms like a Tetraman. But with Jetray's wings, tail, and horned head. The Omnitrix symbol gleamed at the center of his chest, occasionally sparking with unusual energy. "Great, now the watch is giving me fusion forms," Ben muttered. Though he couldn't deny the potential advantages of this particular combination. Testing his new form, Ben launched himself into the air, powerful wings carrying him. Aloft with the speed of Jetray but the strength of 4 arms still evident in his muscular build. He banked sharply, getting a feel for the hybrid body's capabilities. "I can work with this," he decided, diving toward a Titan that had cornered a group of soldiers against the wall. Ben crashed into the creature with the combined momentum of Jetray's speed and 4 arms mass, sending it staggering backward. Before it could recover, he delivered a devastating quadruple punch to its face, then spun in midair, his tail lashing out to slice through the nape of its neck with surprising precision. Soldiers stared up at him in shock as he hovered above them, wings beating steadily. "Are you all right?" Ben called down to them. What are you?" One of them stammered, a young man with a shaved head. "Friendly," Ben replied simply. "Get to safety. I'll cover you." Without waiting for a response, he took off again, scanning the battlefield for areas where he could make the most difference. He spotted Mikasa and Armin fighting alongside a freckled young woman with tied-back brown hair, all 3 of them struggling against a pair of Titans. Ben swooped in, grabbing one Titan by the shoulders with his lower arms while his upper pair hammered blows into its face. The creature's head snapped back from the force, giving Ben the opening he needed to flip over its body and tear through its nape with his claws. Mikasa had already dispatched the second Titan with her characteristic efficiency, landing on a nearby roof as its body collapsed in a steaming heap. "Your transformations," she said, eyes narrowing as she studied Ben's hybrid form. "They're different each time." "Yeah, well, this one's new even to me," Ben replied, hovering just off the edge of the roof. "The watch is acting weird since I got here. Speaking of which, where exactly is here?" "You truly don't know?" Armin asked, joining them on the rooftop. "You're within Wall Rose, in the Trost district of what remains of human civilization." "What remains? What happened to the rest of it?" The freckled woman snorted in disbelief. "The Titans happened. They've devoured most of humanity. We're the last survivors, protected by 3 concentric walls, well, 2 now that Wall Maria has fallen." Ben absorbed this information with growing horror. "How long have these things been around?" "Over a century," Armin answered, his intelligent eyes studying Ben with increasing curiosity. "You really aren't from here, are you? Where did you come from?" "Another universe, I think," Ben admitted. "My device, the Omnitrix, malfunctioned during a fight and somehow sent me here. It's happened before, but usually, I end up in parallel versions of my own world, not, whatever this is." "Another universe," the freckled woman repeated incredulously. "That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, and I just watched you transform into some kind of 4-armed bat monster." "Ymir," Mikasa said quietly, "after everything we've seen, is it really so impossible?" Before the conversation could continue, a deafening roar drew their attention back to the battle. Eren's Titan form was engaged in combat with a female Titan that had appeared seemingly from nowhere. Unlike the mindless creatures they'd been fighting, this one moved with obvious intelligence and skill, using martial arts techniques to counter Eren's attacks. Another Titan shifter? Ben asked, watching the brutal fight with growing concern. Impossible, Armin whispered. The only shifters we know of are Eren, Reiner, and Bertholdt, and the latter two have been revealed as enemies. Well, someone forgot to tell her that, Ben said grimly, watching as the female Titan gained the upper hand, driving Eren back toward the inner wall where civilians were still being evacuated. We need to assist Eren, Mikasa declared, already preparing to launch herself toward the fighting Titans. Wait, Ben said, grabbing her shoulder with one of his lower arms. Those two are way out of your weight class. You'd just get yourself killed. Mikasa's eyes flashed dangerously. Eren needs me, and he needs you alive, Ben countered. Look, I can match them for size and strength in this form. Let me handle the female Titan. You and the others focus on protecting the evacuation. For a moment, Mikasa looked ready to ignore him completely, but Armin placed a hand on her arm. He's right, Mikasa, we'd just be in the way against another shifter. Our priority has to be the civilians. After a tense moment, Mikasa gave a curt nod. If Eren is harmed because of your overconfidence, I will hold you personally responsible. Fair enough, Ben replied, understanding the depth of her concern. He turned to Armin. Any advice on fighting this one? She seems a lot smarter than the others. Aim for the limbs first, Armin suggested quickly. Titan shifters can focus their regeneration, so disabling the arms and legs will force them to choose between mobility and fighting capacity. And be careful, she may have abilities we haven't seen yet. Ben nodded, then launched himself toward the clash of Titans, his hybrid form's wings carrying him across the district in seconds. As he approached, he could see that Eren was losing badly. The female Titan had crystallized her fingers into hardened points and was systematically dismantling his defenses, tearing chunks from his Titan form with surgical precision. Ben crashed into her from above, the combined speed and strength of his hybrid form sending her stumbling away from Eren. Pick on someone your own size, he growled, hovering just out of her reach. The female Titan's eyes widened fractionally, the first sign of genuine surprise Ben had seen from any of these creatures. She studied him with obvious intelligence, assessing this new threat with calculating efficiency. Eren used the distraction to recover, his Titan form regenerating steam as he regained his fighting stance. He roared, a sound of primal challenge that echoed across the district. The female Titan glanced between them, seemingly reassessing her odds against two opponents. In a burst of unexpected speed, she turned and sprinted away, heading not toward the outer breach but deeper into the district. She's going after something specific, Ben realized. Eren, we need to stop her. Eren's Titan gave no indication of whether he understood Ben's words. But he immediately gave chase, his muscular form moving with surprising agility for its size. Ben flew alongside him, the strange hybrid form allowing him to keep pace easily. The female Titan led them on a winding path through the district, occasionally glancing back to ensure they were still following. It was only when they rounded a corner to find themselves in a narrow street with buildings pressed close on either side that Ben realized they'd been lured into a trap. Eren, stop, he shouted, but too late. The female Titan pivoted suddenly, her leg lashing out in a devastating kick that caught Eren's Titan in the chest, sending him crashing through a building. Before Ben could react, her hardened fingers slashed at his wings, shredding the delicate membranes. Ben fell, his flight capability crippled. He managed to catch himself on a rooftop, rolling to absorb the impact, but the female Titan was already on him, her fist crystallized into a hardened weapon as she brought it down toward his chest. Ben caught her fist with all four arms, muscles straining against her incredible strength. Her expressionless face revealed nothing, but her eyes studied him with undisguised curiosity. Particularly the Omnitrix symbol on his chest. What's so interesting? Ben grunted, struggling to hold her back. Never seen an alien before. The female Titan's eyes narrowed slightly, and her other hand moved with blinding speed, not toward Ben but toward the Omnitrix itself. Her finger, crystallized into a precision point, touched the symbol just as Ben managed to throw her off balance. A surge of energy exploded between them, green lightning arcing from the Omnitrix and mingling with the strange energy that seemed to power the Titans. Ben screamed as conflicting transformative powers coursed through his body, the Omnitrix's fail-safes engaging to protect him. In a flash of green light, Ben returned to human form, collapsing onto the rooftop as the female Titan staggered backward, steam erupting from her fingertips where they had touched the Omnitrix. For a moment, they stared at each other, a teenage boy and a 15-meter Titan, both apparently surprised by what had just happened. Then the female Titan's eyes narrowed in what might have been determination. She reached for him again, this time with her uninjured hand. Before she could grab him, a blur of movement interrupted her. Levi, spinning like a deadly tornado, sliced through her extended fingers, then up her arm, and across her eyes in a single fluid sequence of attacks. The female Titan recoiled, steam pouring from her wounds as she covered the nape of her neck protectively. "Get up, kid," Levi ordered, landing beside Ben with characteristic grace. "Whatever you did to piss her off, she's not letting it go easily." Ben struggled to his feet, the Omnitrix flashing erratically on his wrist. She was interested in the watch. When she touched it, there was some kind of energy reaction. Levi's eyes narrowed. "Hange will want to hear about that. For now, we need to move. Blinded or not, she's still a threat." As if to emphasize his point, the female Titan lashed out blindly, her fist crashing out the building just meters from where they stood. "I can't transform right now," Ben said, gesturing to the malfunctioning Omnitrix. "The watch needs time to reset after that energy surge." Without another word, Levi grabbed Ben around the waist and launched them both off the rooftop, gas hissing from his ODM gear as they swung away from the rampaging Titan. Despite his small stature, the captain carried Ben with surprising strength, navigating the urban terrain with unmatched skill. They landed on a church steeple, high enough to have a good view of the ongoing battle. The female Titan had recovered her vision and was engaged with Eren once more, their titanic struggle demolishing buildings with each exchange of blows. "Your transformations," Levi said abruptly. "How many different forms can you take?" "Normally, I have access to over 70 alien forms," Ben answered, still watching the Omnitrix's erratic behavior with concern. "But since arriving here, the watch has been malfunctioning. I've only been able to access a few, and that last one was some kind of fusion that shouldn't even be possible." 70, Levi repeated, the barest hint of surprise breaking through his stoic expression. "Potentially 70 different weapons against the Titans." "They're not weapons," Ben corrected reflexively. "They're living beings from different worlds. I just borrow their forms and abilities temporarily." "In a world where humanity is on the brink of extinction," Levi replied coldly, "everything is a weapon or a liability. Figure out which one you are quickly." Before Ben could respond, the Omnitrix suddenly beeped back to life, its hourglass symbol stabilizing to a steady green glow. "System reset complete," the device announced in a mechanical approximation of Ben's voice. "Interdimensional energy signature detected and integrated. New transformation options available." "What does that mean?" Levi asked sharply. "I'm not entirely sure," Ben admitted, studying the new alien silhouettes that had appeared in the Omnitrix's holographic display. "But I think when that female Titan touched the watch, it somehow sampled her energy, maybe even her DNA." "Are you saying you could transform into a Titan?" Ben selected the new silhouette that most resembled a humanoid figure. "One way to find out. You might want to step back." Levi did so, hands hovering near his blade high. LTS as Ben slammed his palm down on the Omnitrix. Green lightning crackled around him, mingling with strange yellowish energy that reminded Ben of what he'd seen when Eren transformed. His body grew rapidly, muscles expanding and hardening as his height increased exponentially. Unlike his usual transformations, this one felt raw, almost primal, as if the very essence of his being was being torn apart and reconstructed according to a different blueprint altogether. When the transformation completed, Ben towered 15 meters above the church steeple, his Titan form lean and athletic, with hard end plates covering vital areas like natural armor. The Omnitrix symbol was embedded in the center of his chest, pulsing with green energy that spread through his Titan body in circuit-like patterns. Unlike the mindless Titans or even the shifters he'd seen, Ben's Titan form retained his human face, albeit enlarged and with glowing green eyes. He could feel the enormous power coursing through this new body, along with something else, a primal rage that simmered just below the surface of his consciousness, threatening to overwhelm his identity if he lost focus. "This is intense," Ben said. His Titan voice deeper but still recognizably his own. He looked down at Levi, who had drawn his blades but not yet attacked. "Can you control it?" Levi demanded, tense and ready to act if necessary. Ben focused on his breathing, mentally asserting control over the strange, angry energy that seemed intrinsic to the Titan form. "Yes," he answered after a moment. "It's different from my other transfo. Our Mashins. There's some kind of rage trying to take over, but I can handle it." Levi studied him for a moment longer, then nodded once. "Then make yourself useful. Stop the female Titan before she reaches the inner gate." Ben turned toward where Eren and the female Titan were still locked in combat. Eren was clearly losing, his regeneration unable to keep pace with the female Titan's crystallized attacks. As Ben watched, she delivered a devastating kick that sent Eren crashing into the wall, his Titan form partially collapsing from the damage. "Time to even the odds," Ben muttered, launching hymns Elf forward with a speed that belied his massive size. The female Titan sensed his approach and turned just in time to receive a powerful punch to her face. Unlike Eren's wild, untrained attacks, Ben's blow was precisely aimed. Leveraging his years of combat experience against various alien threats, she staggered backward, visibly surprised by the controlled nature of his attack. Her eyes widened, further when she noticed the green energy patterns coursing through his Titan form, particularly the Omnitrix symbol embedded in his chest. Ben pressed his advantage, delivering a combination of strikes that forced her onto the defensive. He deliberately varied his attack patterns, preventing her from predicting his movements as she had with Eren. "You're not the only one who knows how to fight," Ben growled, catching her crystallized fist in his hand. To his surprise, his Titan form began to develop its own crystalline structures in response, green energy infusing the hardened material and making it even stronger than hers. The female Titan's eyes narrowed in what might have been frustration. She suddenly changed tactics, dropping low and sweeping Ben's legs out from under him. As he fell, she broke away, sprinting toward where Eren was still struggling to regenerate his damaged Titan form. "No, you don't," Ben roared, pushing himself up with unexpected agility. He charged after her, green energy surging through his Titan body as the Omnitrix seemingly adapted to this new form, enhancing its capabilities beyond those of a normal Titan shifter. The female Titan reached Eren first, her hand crystallizing into a blade as she prepared to cut him out of his Titan's nape. Ben tackled her from behind, both of them crashing into a large building that collapsed around their massive forms. They grappled in the ruins, each trying to gain leverage over the other. The female Titan was skilled and experienced, but Ben's Titan form continued to evolve as the Omnitrix integrated more fully with its biology, developing new adaptations to counter her abilities. When she crystallized her skin, Ben's form responded with even harder crystalline structures infused with green energy. When she moved with unexpected speed, his Titan's muscles reconfigured to match her agility. It was as if the Omnitrix was treating this Titan form like any other alien transformation, optimizing it based on combat needs. "What's the matter?" Ben taunted as he blocked another of her strikes. "Not used to fighting someone who can adapt as quickly as you can." The female Titan's eyes showed a flash of what might have been alarm. She suddenly disengaged, backing away from Ben with calculated caution. Her gaze flicked between Ben's Titan form and the approaching Scout Regiment soldiers, who had regrouped and were now converging on their position. Making a decision, she turned and ran, not toward any strategic position but directly away from the battle, heading for the outer wall. "She's retreating," Ben realized, watching as she scaled the wall with surprising agility, disappearing over the top before any of the scouts could intercept her. Eren had finally regenerated enough to stand, his Titan form moving to Ben's side as they watched the female Titan escape. A strange sense of recognition seemed to pass between them, two beings with the power to transform, though through very different means. The Omnitrix symbol on Ben's chest suddenly began to flash red. "Looks like time's up for this round," he muttered, bracing himself for the transformation back to human form. In a flash of green light, Ben returned to normal, the enormous Titan body dissolving into steam around him. He fell, disoriented by the sudden shift in perspective and size, but managed to land on his feet amidst the rubble. Uren's Titan knelt beside him, its fierce eyes studying him with what seemed like curiosity. Steam erupted from the nape of its neck as the human Uren emerged, looking exhausted but alert. "Who are you?" Uren demanded, his voice hoarse. "What are you?" Before Ben could answer, they were surrounded by Scout Regiment soldiers, led by Levi and a tall, commanding blond man with intense eyes and impressive eyebrows. "Uren Jaeger, stand down," the blond man ordered. "This individual is now under the protection and supervision of the Scout Regiment." "Commander Irwin," Uren acknowledged, though his suspicious gaze remained fixed on Ben. "He transformed into a Titan, but different from any I've seen. And before that, he was something else entirely, some kind of four-armed flying creature." "I saw," Irwin replied calmly. "Section Commander Hange has provided a preliminary report on his various transformations." "Most interesting." Ben straightened, brushing debris from his clothing. "Look, I'm happy to explain everything I can. But maybe we could do it somewhere that isn't an active battlefield." Irwin's piercing gaze studied Ben for a long moment. "Very well, Captain Levi, escort our guest to headquarters. Ensure he's comfortable but secure. I want a full debriefing once the district is cleared." "Yes, sir," Levi replied, his expression unreadable. As they prepared to leave the battlefield, Ben caught sight of various Scout Regiment members watching him with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright suspicion. Mikasa and Armin stood with Uren, the three of them conferring TLY while occasionally glancing in his direction. Hange approached, practically vibrating with excitement. That Titan form was fascinating. The green energy patterns, the adaptive crystallization, maintenance of full cognitive function and speech capabilities, it's revolutionary. Not to mention your previous transformations into entirely different species." "Hange," Levi interrupted, "save the scientific ecstasy for the debriefing." Quote, "But Levi, don't you realize what this means?" Hange pressed, gesturing enthusiastically toward Ben. "If we can understand how his transformations work, it's LD completely change our approach to fighting Titans." "I said later," Levi repeated firmly, though Ben detected a hint of resigned tolerance beneath his stern exterior. As they made their way through the devastated district, Ben took in the full extent of the destruction. Buildings lay in ruins, bodies of civilians and soldiers alike scattered among the debris. The survivors moved with a shell-shocked determination, focusing on immediate tasks rather than allowing themselves to process the horror they had just experienced. "Is it always like this?" Ben asked quietly as they passed a group of soldiers collecting their fallen comrades. "Yes," Levi answered simply. "This is our reality. Every expedition, every Titan incursion ends with a body count. We measure victory not by triumph but by survival." Ben fell silent, contemplating the brutal world he had found himself in. He'd faced threats to Earth before: alien invasions, interdimensional conquerors, mad scientists with doomsday devices. But never a century-long siege against humanity itself, a slow grinding down of hope and numbers until only a remnant remained. They arrived at a stone fortress that served as the Scout Regiment headquarters. Ben was escorted to a Spartan room with a bed, desk, and chair, comfortable by local standards but clearly designed for functionality rather than luxury. "You'll remain here until Commander Irwin is ready to speak with you," Levi informed him. "Food will be brought shortly." "Am I a prisoner?" Ben asked directly. Levi considered the question. "That depends entirely on you. Prove yourself an ally, and you'll be treated as one. Prove yourself a threat." He left the implication hanging. "I understand," Ben nodded. "For what it's worth, wherever I am, whatever this place is, I want to help. It's kind of what I do." "So I've observed," Levi acknowledged. "Rest. You'll need your strength for what's coming." With that, the captain left, the door closing firmly behind him. Ben was alone, with his thoughts and a malfunctioning Omnitrix in a world besieged by man-eating giants. He sat on the bed, examining the watch. The interface had definitely changed, incorporating new alien Silhue TTES he didn't recognize, hybrids and adaptations influenced by this world's unique energy. The Titan transformation was there, along with several variations that seemed to combine Titan biology with his existing alien forms. Grandpa Max would have a field day analyzing this, Ben murmured, thinking of his grandfather's plumber expertise. And Gwen would probably have some magical explanation for those titans. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. It opened to reveal a young woman with kind eyes and auburn hair pulled back in a ponytail, carrying a tray of food. "I brought you dinner," she said, entering cautiously. "I'm Petra Rawl, a member of Captain Levi's Special Operations Squad." "Thanks," Ben said, suddenly realizing how hungry he was after all the transformations. "I'm Ben Tennyson." "So I've heard," she replied with a small smile, setting the tray on the desk. "Everyone's talking about you and your abilities." "I bet they are," Ben chuckled, moving to inspect the food, simple but hearty soup, bread, and what looked like dried meat. "What are they saying?" Petra hesitated, then sat in the desk chair. "Some think you're a new type of Titan shifter, maybe from beyond the walls. Others think you're some kind of experiment gone wrong. The more superstitious ones are calling you a demon or a god." "And what do you think?" Ben asked, taking a bite of the bread. "I think," she said carefully, "that what matters is not what you are, but what you choose to do with your power. Today, you chose to fight alongside us against the Titans. That counts for something with me." Ben nodded appreciatively. "That's actually a pretty wise way of looking at it." Petra stood, moving toward the door. "Commander Irwin will see you in the morning. Try to get some rest. Tomorrow will be complicated." "Story of my life," Ben replied with a wry smile. After she left, Ben finished his meal and lay back on the bed, staring at the stone ceiling. The Proto-Omnitrix on his wrist continued its diagnostic routines, occasionally beeping or flashing as it integrated the new energy signatures it had encountered. "Okay, Tennyson," he murmured to himself. "You're stuck in a world with man-eating giants, military politics, and at least one person who can transform like you do. The Omnitrix is acting weird, you have no idea how to get home, and everyone's watching to see whose side you're on." He closed his eyes, exhaustion from the day's events finally catching up to him. Just another Tuesday, really. Outside his window, the sun set over a world that had lived in fear for over a century. A world where humanity clung to existence behind crumbling walls. A world that, for better or worse, now had a new variable in its fight for survival, a teenager with the most powerful device in the universe strapped to his wrist. As darkness fell, Ben Tennyson drifted into uneasy sleep, unaware that his arrival had already set in motion events that would forever change the course of this world's history. Chapter 2. Beyond the Boundaries. The sky bled crimson as dawn broke over Wall Rose. Ben stood atop the Scout Regiment headquarters, watching soldiers prepare for the expedition beyond the walls. Wagons loaded with supplies, horses being saddled, and the distinctive green cloaks of the scouts fluttering in the morning breeze created a tableau of organized chaos. 3 days had passed since his arrival in this world. 3 days of interrogations, demonstrations, and political maneuvering that made fighting aliens seem straightforward by comparison. "Beautiful, isn't it?" a voice asked behind him. Ben turned to find Historia, or Krista Lenz, as she called herself, standing at the edge of the roof. Petite with flowing blonde hair and eyes the color of a clear summer sky. She had an ethereal quality that seemed out of place in this brutal world. "The sunrise or the military mobilization?" Ben asked. "Both," she replied, stepping closer. "Most people only see the ROR and death associated with the scouts, but there's something inspiring about watching them prepare to venture where most humans fear to tread." Ben studied her thoughtfully. During his short time here, he'd noticed that Krista maintained a careful facade, the sweet, selfless girl beloved by everyone. Yet occasionally, when she thought no one was watching, her expression changed to something harder, more calculating. "You're different from how you present yourself," Ben observed quietly. Krista's smile froze momentarily before recovering. "I don't know what you mean. I'm just Krista Lenz, the kind-hearted scout who everyone adores," Ben finished for her. "Sure, and I'm just a normal guy who happened to find a watch in the woods." Her eyes flashed with something, warning, perhaps, or recognition. "We all have secrets, Ben Tennyson. Some are safer kept hidden." "Maybe," Ben conceded, turning back to the sunrise. "But in my experience, the secrets you keep eventually start keeping you." A moment of silence stretched between them before Krista changed the subject. Commander Irwin has assigned you to Hange's squad for the expedition. Lucky me, Ben chuckled. 20 questions. About alien biology while dodging Titans. She's brilliant, Krista defended, though a small smile tugged at her lips. Just enthusiastic. That's one word for it. The sound of boots on stone NT erupted them as Levi appeared at the stairwell. His perpetual expression of mild disdain hadn't changed since Ben had met him. Briefing in 5 minutes, he stated flatly. And Lenz, Ymir is looking for you. Thank you, Captain, Krista replied, her persona shifting seamlessly back to the sweet, obedient soldier. She nodded politely to Ben before departing, leaving him alone with Levi. The captain studied Ben with calculating eyes. Commander Irwin is taking a significant risk bringing you outside the walls so soon. Because you still don't trust me. Because we don't know you, Levi corrected. Your abilities make you valuable, but they also make you unpredictable. Unpredictability gets people killed beyond the walls. Ben held the shorter man's gaze. I've been saving lives since I was 10 years old, Captain. Different world, same principle, protect the innocent, stop the monsters. The principle may be the same, Levi acknowledged, but the stakes are higher here. We aren't fighting to save the world. We're fighting to save what's left of it. With that sobering thought, Levi turned and descended the stairs, expecting Ben to follow. The briefing room buzzed with tension and anticipation. Maps covered the walls, marked with routes, fallback positions, and known Titan concentrations. Ben leaned against the back wall, observing the scout regiment's elite. Commander Irwin. Smith dominated the room with his imposing presence, his calculating eyes missing nothing. Beside him, Hange vibrated with barely contained excitement, occasionally shooting eager glances at Ben. Mick. Asa Ackerman stood protectively near Aren Yeager, her red scarf a splash of color against the military uniforms. Unlike most soldiers, who regarded Ben with curiosity or suspicion, Mikasa watched him with the cold assessment of someone calculating exactly how to neutralize a potential threat. The 57th expedition beyond the walls commences in 1 hour, Commander Irwin announced, his deep voice silencing all conversation. Our primary objectives are threefold: to establish a supply route toward Shiganshina district, to assess Titan activity patterns in the southern territories, and to evaluate our new assets' capabilities in open terrain. All eyes turned briefly to Ben, who maintained a neutral expression. Being called an asset wasn't new to him. Various government agencies back home had tried to classify him similarly over the years. The formation will follow standard long-range scouting patterns with one modification, Irwin continued, indicating the map. Squad Hange will operate as an independent unit with our guest, testing various combat scenarios against Titans at the formation's right flank. Murmurs rippled through the room. The right flank would face the highest concentration of Titans, a dangerous position for experimental tactics. Commander, a soldier objected, putting an untested asset on our most vulnerable flank risks the entire formation. The risk has been calculated, Irwin replied calmly. Based on the capabilities demonstrated within Trost District, Squad Hange with Tennyson represents our most combat-effective unit against multiple Titans. And if he turns against us? Someone else asked. Before Irwin could answer, Levi cut in. Then I'll cut him down myself. His tone was matter of fact, not threatening, simply stating an operational reality. Ben suppressed a smile. He'd faced similar skepticism on countless alien worlds. Fair enough, he said, addressing the room. But just so we're clear, I'm here to help. If I wanted to hurt anyone, I'd have done it already. Bold words from someone who keeps changing shape, remarked a tall, muscular blonde man, Reiner Braun, if Ben remembered correctly. Says the guy with the suspiciously similar ability, Ben countered smoothly. Noting how Rainer's eyes narrowed fractionally. Enough, Irwin commanded. Speculation and mistrust endanger the mission more than any external factor. Squad leaders, review your assigned positions. Departure in 50 minutes. As the meeting dispersed, Hange practically pounced on Ben, eyes gleaming with scientific fervor. Today is going to be incredible. Open terrain combat against multiple Titan types, the perfect environment to test your transformations. I've prepared a comprehensive observation protocol and... Hange, Levi interrupted, he needs gear first. Right. Hange nodded rapidly. Can't document his magnificent abilities if he gets eaten in the first 5 minutes. Though that would provide valuable data on Omnitrix recovery from digestive processes. I'd rather skip that experiment, Ben interjected dryly. 40 minutes later, Ben stood in the equipment room, awkwardly adjusting the straps of the ODM harness. The complex array O.F. belts and buckles seemed designed specifically to confound first-time users. You're doing it wrong, a cool female voice observed. Annie Lenhart leaned against the doorframe, her expression bored but her ice blue eyes attentive. Unlike most scouts preparing for the expedition, she wore the distinctive military police uniform. I'd have never guessed, Ben replied sarcastically, entangling another crossed strap. Annie pushed herself off the wall and approached. Arms up, she commanded. Ben complied, and with swift, efficient movements, Annie reconfigured the harness, her fingers working with practiced precision. Her touch was clinical, impersonal, yet Ben couldn't help noticing how she deliberately avoided contact with the Omnitrix. You're not joining the expedition? He asked as she adjusted the final buckles. Military police rarely leave the interior, she replied, stepping back to inspect her work. I'm here on liaison duty. Meaning you're reporting back on the mysterious shapeshifter. A flicker of something, perhaps surprise, crossed Annie's normally impassive features. You're more perceptive than you appear. And you're more concerned about my presence than you let on, Ben countered. Meeting her gaze directly, the question is why? Annie held his eyes for a long moment before responding. In a world where humans are prey, anything unknown is a potential threat. You're very unknown, Ben Tennyson. I could say the same about this world, Ben replied. Giant humanoid monsters, people who can transform into them, walls that have stood for a century, it's all pretty strange from where I'm standing. Quote, and where exactly are you standing? Annie asked, her voice dropping slightly. Because from what I've observed, you aren't committed to any side yet. Before Ben could respond, the equipment room door swung open, revealing Mikasa. Her dark eyes flicked between Ben and Annie, assessing the situation with military precision. Hange is looking for you, she informed Ben. Her tone neutral but her posture subtly defensive. The expedition leaves in 10 minutes. Annie stepped away, her face resuming its characteristic blank expression. Remember what I said about unknowns, Tennyson, she said quietly before departing, brushing past Mikasa with casual indifference. Once Annie was gone, Mikasa approached, checking Ben's gear with critical eyes. Your left lateral strap is too loose, she observed, tightening it with efficient movements. A minor imbalance could prove fatal during evasive maneuvers. Thanks, Ben said, genuinely appreciative. Annie helped, but Lenhart is military police, Mikasa interrupted. They train with the gear but rarely use it in combat situations. Her fingers worked quickly, making final adjustments. There, this C configuration will provide optimal mobility. Ben studied her as she worked, her methodical precision, the controlled strength in her hands, the perpetual alertness in her posture. She reminded him of Rook in some ways, hyper-competent, serious, dedicated to her mission. You don't trust me around Eren, Ben stated rather than asked. Mikasa's hands paused momentarily before resuming their work. I don't trust anyone around Eren, she corrected, but especially not someone who can transform into multiple forms, including a titan. Fair enough, Ben acknowledged. For what it's worth, I have no intention of hurting Eren or anyone else here. Unless they're trying to eat people, in which case, all bets are off. The barest hint of a smile tugged at Mikasa's lips. A reasonable policy, she conceded, stepping back from the adjusted harness. Hange says you've been practicing with the maneuvering gear. If you can call it practice. Mostly just trying not to face-plant or tangle myself in the wires. You compensate with your transformations, Mikasa observed. When the gear fails you, you change form. It's an unusual approach. Story of my life, Ben chuckled. Why master one skill and you can be decent at 15 different ones? Mikasa's expression remained serious. Because in this world, decent gets you killed. Remember that beyond the walls. The scout regiment departed wall rose with practiced precision. Hundreds of horses and riders flowing through the gate in formation. Ben rode alongside Hange's squad, still adjusting to horseback riding, another skill he'd never quite mastered. The long-range scouting formation is Commander Irwin's revolutionary strategy, Hange explained enthusiastically as they galloped across the open plains. Riders spread across a wide area detect Titans and signal their presence using colored flares. The formation can then adjust course to avoid large concentrations while engaging smaller threats. Ben nodded, dividing his attention between Hange's explanation and staying on his horse. The open landscape beyond the walls stretched endlessly before them, rolling grasslands occasionally broken by clusters of trees or abandoned settlements. Despite the beauty of the untamed wilderness, an oppressive sense of danger permeated everything. "So what's the plan for testing my abilities?" Ben asked as they settled into position on the formation's right flank. Hange's eyes gleamed with scientific enthusiasm. "I've prepared a series of escalating engagement scenarios. First, isolated Titan encounters to establish baseline effectiveness of different transformations. Then, multiple opponents to assess tactical adaptability. Finally, if we encounter an abnormal, we'll evaluate your problem-solving capabilities against unpredictable threats." "You've really thought this through," Ben observed, both impressed and slightly concerned by Hange's meticulous planning for what were essentially life-or-death combat situations. "Science demands rigor," Hange declared. "Speaking of which, I've been meaning to ask, your Omnitrix's energy signature shows fascinating correlations with Titan transformation energy. Have you noticed any changes in its functionality since arriving in our world?" Ben glanced down at the Proto-Omnitrix. "It's definitely been acting differently. The transformation selection is limited, and I'm getting strange hybrid forms that shouldn't be possible. Plus, after touching that female Titan, it somehow integrated Titan DNA into my transformation options." "Fascinating," Hange exclaimed, nearly bouncing in the saddle. "A device that adapts to local biological energy patterns. The scientific implications are staggering. We must run comparative analysis on the energy outputs during different transformation sequences." "Perhaps if we—" "Red flare," interrupted Moblet, Hange's assistant. "Titan spotted at 2 o'clock, approximately 800 meters and closing." The jubilant scientist immediately shifted to tactical commander. "Perfect timing, Ben. This is your first test scenario. Single Titan, approximately 10-meter class based on the relay signal pattern. Transform and engage while we document performance metrics." Ben nodded, pulling his horse to a stop and dismounting. "Any preferences for which alien to use?" "Dealer's choice," Hange replied, already preparing observation equipment. "Baseline perfor. Mance assessment should reflect your natural tactical instincts." The Proto-Omnitrix had been behaving erratically since his arrival, but Ben had discovered that certain alien forms remained consistently available. He activated the device, cycling through the limited selection before settling on a familiar silhouette. "Let's try something with speed this time," he decided, slapping down on the watch face. Green light enveloped him as his DNA reconfigured. His body stretched and thinned, becoming more aerodynamic. Blue fur covered his transformed form, and a black helmet-like structure encased his head. Sharp claws extended from his hands and feet, and a long striped tail completed the transformation. "Fast track," Ben called out, then paused in confusion. While the form was indeed the Citricaya speedster, subtle differences were immediately apparent. His claws were longer and seemed designed for climbing rather than just slashing. The tail, normally a simple counterbalance, now felt stronger and more prehensile. Most notably, there were blade-like protrusions extending from his forearms, almost like built-in swords. "Incredible," Hange exclaimed, circling around Ben with scientific glee. "Adaptive morphology based on environmental combat requirements. Your fast-track form has developed natural analogs to RODM gear and blades." Ben flexed his new appendages experimentally. "He Omnitrix must be adapting my transformations to be more effective against Titans." Theory confirmed through observation. The biomechanical symbiosis between your device and transformative capabilities shows intelligent adaptation. Hange was practically vibrating with excitement. "Now, engage the Titan approaching from the northeast while we document performance metrics." Ben nodded, then accelerated in a blur of motion. Fast Track's natural speed, combined with the new adaptations, allowed him to cover ground at an astonishing rate. Within seconds, he spotted the Titan, a 12-meter humanoid, with disproportionately long arms and a vacant, smiling face. "Time to test these blade thingies," Ben muttered, charging directly toward the creature. The Titan noticed him and reached down with surprising speed. Ben dodged effortlessly, his enhanced reflexes making the Titan's movements seem almost sluggish by comparison. He raced up the creature's extended arm, the natural claws on his feet providing perfect traction. Reaching the shoulder, Ben spun and slashed with his forearm blades, aiming for the nape as he'd been taught. The blades cut deep, but not quite deep enough. The Titan roared, swatting at him with its other hand. Ben leapt clear, landing on the ground and reassessing. "Need more cutting power," he murmured. Channeling fast-track speed, he raced around the Titan in tight circles, building momentum before launching himself into a spinning attack aimed directly at the nape. This time, the blades cut true, slicing cleanly through the critical spot. The Titan collapsed, stream already rising from its dissolving form. Ben skidded to a halt as Hange and the squad galloped up, the scientist already scribbling notes frantically. "Exceptional efficiency," Hange declared. 2. Tall engagement time 17.3 seconds from initial contact to neutralization. The adapted blades integrated into your fast-track form demonstrate precise evolutionary response to Titan-specific combat requirements. "It felt natural," Ben observed, examining the blade structures. "Like the Omnitrix knew exactly what adaptations I'd need. The biomechanical interface between your consciousness and THE device appears to create feedback loops that influence transformation parameters," Hange theorized. "Simply incredible. Now, let's proceed to the next scenario, multiple opponents." As if on cue, Moblet spotted another flare. "Section Commander, 2 Titans approaching from different vectors, one from the east, approximately 7-meter class, another from the southeast, 15-meter class." "Perfect timing," Hange exclaimed with inappropriate enthusiasm. "Ben, engage using a different transformation. We need comparative data across multiple forms." The Omnitrix was already flashing red, signaling the end of the current transformation. In a burst of green light, Ben returned to human form just as the 2 Titans appeared on the horizon. "No time to be picky," he muttered, quickly activating the Omnitrix again and selecting the first available transformation. This time, his body grew massively, skin turning rocky and magma-like. 4 massive arms sprouted from his torso as his head erupted in flames. "Heat blast," Ben called, though immediately noticed this wasn't quite the pyronite he was familiar with. Like Fast Track, this form had adapted. The rocky exoskeleton was thicker, more armor-like, and the flames burned with unusual intensity. Most notably, his lower arms ended not in standard hands but in blade-like formations of superheated rock. Thermal kinetic offensive capabilities combined with reinforced defensive structure, Hange noted enthusiastically. "This form appears optimized for both attack and defense." "Time to turn up the heat," Ben growled, his voice deeper and more resonant than Heatblast's usual tone. The 2 Titans approached from different directions, forcing Ben to divide his attention. The smaller one reached him first, grasping with unexpected speed. Ben caught its hand with his upper arms while slashing at its wrist with his lower blade arms. The superheated rock sliced through Titan flesh with surprising ease, severing the creature's hand completely. As the smaller Titan reeled back, the 15-meter class lunged forward. Ben responded by generating a massive wave of intensified flame, hot enough to temporarily blind and disorient the larger creature. Using the distraction, he propelled himself upward on jets of flame, landing on the smaller Titan's shoulder. With precise movements, Ben drove both lower blade arms deep into the nape, the superheated rock cauterizing the wound even as it cut. The Titan collapsed immediately, steam mixing with the flames still emanating from Ben's body. The larger Titan recovered and charged again, its movements erratic and unpredictable, and abnormal. Ben realized. It zigzagged in its approach, making targeting difficult. "Let's see how you like this," Ben muttered, concentrating his power. The flames across his body intensified to white-hot, and he slammed all 4 arms into the ground. A wave of molten earth erupted in a straight line toward the Titan, catching it mid-stride and immobilizing its legs in rapidly cooling magma. With the creature temporarily trapped, Ben launched himself forward on jets of flame, spiraling through the air to build momentum before driving all four arms into the Titan's nape. The superheated rock blades cut clean through, and the creature collapsed face first into the cooling magma. Landing beside the dissolving Titans, Ben maintained his heat blast form as Hange approached. Face flushed with scientific excitement. Revolutionary combat techniques, the scientist exclaimed. The thermal manipulation capabilities combined with adapted blade structures present an entirely new paradigm for Titan engagement. The strategically deployed ground liquefaction to immobilize the abnormal was particularly brilliant. Just adapting to the situation, Ben replied modestly, Ow. He couldn't help feeling satisfied with the effectiveness of his transformed state. Your transformations demonstrate tactical intelligence beyond mere power application, Hange observed, suddenly more serious. You fight like someone who's faced countless different enemies, not just through strength but through strategic adaptation. I have, Ben confirmed. Back in my world, I've been fighting all kinds of aliens and monsters since I was a kid. You learn to think on your feet when every new threat has different powers and weaknesses. Hange's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. A lifetime of combat against diverse enemies would explain your adaptability. Most soldiers here train exclusively for Titans, developing specialized but limited combat responses. Before the conversation could continue, a series of black flares erupted across the horizon. The entire squad tensed immediately. Abnormals? Ben asked, noting their reaction. Worse, Moblet replied grimly. Black flares signal an emergency, specifically, a human threat. Quote, the female Titan, Hange concluded, suddenly all business. She's appeared on the left flank according to the flare pattern. Commander Irwin anticipated this possibility. Ben remembered his encounter with the intelligent Titan in Trost, her calculated movements, her interest in the Omnitrix, and the strange reaction when she'd touched it. What's the protocol? We maintain position, Hange ordered. Commander Irwin has a strategy in place. Our mission remains unchanged. Continue testing your capabilities against standard Titans while the Special Operation Team handles the female Titan. Ben frowned, flames flickering more intensely across his heat blast form. If she's as dangerous as I think she is, they might need backup. Negative, Hange stated firmly. Formation discipline is essential. We follow orders. Reluctantly, Ben nodded, though the decision sat uneasily with him. As a hero accustomed to operating independently, following military chain of command didn't come naturally. For the next hour, they continued methodically testing Ben's transformations against isolated Titans. The Proto-Omnitrix seemed to have stabilized somewhat, owing access to approximately 10 of his alien forms, each showing adaptations specific to Titan combat. Diamond had developed sharper crystalline formations that could cut through Titan nape tissue more effectively. Wildvine gained thorn-like protrusions that hardened on contact with Titan flesh. Even Goop's acidic composition had intensified, capable of dissolving through Titan regenerative tissue. Throughout the tests, Ben couldn't shake his concern about the female Titan. Distant sounds of combat occasionally reached them, unusual explosions, roars unlike typical Titans, and once, a massive lightning strike that could only be a Titan transformation. Something major is happening, Ben observed during a brief respite between engagements. Shouldn't we at least check if they need assistance? Hange's expression turned uncharacteristically serious. Commander Irwin's strategy relies on compartmentalization. Each squad must fulfill its assigned role without deviation, even if other squads are being slaughtered. Ben challenged. Especially then, Hange replied grimly. In the Scout Regiment, we accept that some must die so that humanity can advance. Individual lives, even entire squads, are sacrificial pieces in Irwin's larger game against extinction. The brutally pragmatic assessment disturbed Ben deeply. It ran counter to his hero's ethos of saving everyone possible. Before he could respond, a green flare arced across the sky, followed immediately by multiple black flares forming a converging pattern. Formation collapse and emergency regroup, Moblet interpreted. Something's gone catastrophically wrong. Hange's expression hardened. Abort testing sequence. We rejoined the main formation immediately. As they mounted their horses, Ben transformed back to human form, the Omnitrix recharging. They galloped toward the forest of giant trees where the center of the formation had apparently diverted. The forest of giant trees would be Commander Irwin's fallback position for capturing an intelligent Titan. Hange explained as they rode. The massive trunks provide anchor points for ODM gear while restricting a Titan's mobility. Capturing? Ben asked. Not killing. The female Titan possesses intelligence potentially equivalent to Iren's Titan form. Capturing her alive could provide crucial information about Titan origins and the identity of our enemies. As they approached the forest edge, chaos became evident. Scattered scout regiment members regrouped in disarray, many wounded, others missing entirely. The expressions on the survivors' faces told Ben everything he needed to know. The operation had gone disastrously wrong. Commander Irwin stood with Levi and several other officers, their conversation tense and urgent. Iren, Mikasa, and Armin huddled nearby. Iren's face a mask of frustrated rage while Mikasa attended to what appeared to be minor injuries on his shoulder. Report, Irwin commanded as Hange's squad arrived. Testing protocols completed successfully, Hange replied. Tennyson's transformations demonstrated exceptional combat effectiveness against multiple Titan types. What happened here? Irwin's expression remained stoic, but his eyes betrayed controlled fury. The female Titan evaded our trap, killed the entire special operations squad except for Iren and Levi, then escaped after being cornered. Ben felt the blood drain from his face. An entire elite squad, wiped out. How? She demonstrated capabilities beyond anything we've encountered, Levi stated flatly. Targeted killing of veterans, tactical awareness of our formation weaknesses, and selective hardening of her Titan form to protect the nape. She was after Iren, Mikasa added, her voice tight with controlled anger. Specifically targeting him for capture, not elimination. Ben's mind raced, connecting pieces from his brief encounter with the female Titan in Trost. She's not just after Iren, he realized aloud. She was interested in the Omnitrix too, tried to touch it during our fight. This captured Irwin's full attention. Explain. When we fought in Trost, she specifically targeted the Omnitrix, not me. There was some kind of energy reaction and she touched it. That's how I got the Titan transformation ability. Suggesting she has knowledge of her interest in interdimensional technology, Hange concluded, adjusting glasses that gleamed with scientific curiosity despite the grim situation. Extraordinarily significant. Irwin processed this information with calculating precision. The expedition is terminated. All surviving forces will return to Walrose immediately. Ben Tennyson will ride in the center formation under direct protection. Commander, Ben objected, I can help cover the retreat. My transformations are precisely what our enemy may be targeting. Irwin interrupted. Until we understand why the female Titan is interested in both Iren's power and your device, keeping you separated and protected is strategically essential. Ben wanted to argue but recognized the cold logic in Irwin's assessment. If both he and Iren were captured, this world might lose its two most effective weapons against the Titans. As they reorganized for retreat, Ben found himself positioned in the center formation alongside Iren and the remaining veterans. The mood was somber. Many soldiers cast glances at the wagons carrying shrouded bodies of their comrades. Did you know them? Ben asked Iren quietly, referring to the fallen Special Operations Squad. Iren's hands tightened on his reins until his knuckles whitened. They protected me with their lives. Petra, Eld, Gunther, Oluo, all of them elite soldiers with years of experience. All dead because I hesitated to transform. You can't blame yourself, Ben said automatically. How he recognized the hollow comfort such words offered. Can't I? Iren's green eyes flashed with self-recrimination. I had the power to fight but chose to trust in others instead. Now they're dead. The raw grief and guilt in Iren's voice resonated with Ben. How many times had he faced similar situations? Moments when his decisions or hesitations had consequences for others. Having power means making impossible choices. Ben said after a moment. Trust me, I know. Sometimes you transform, sometimes you don't. Either way, people can get hurt. The only thing you can do is learn and make different choices next time. Iren studied Ben with newfound interest. You sound like you've experienced this before. More times than I can count, Ben admitted. The Omnitrix makes me powerful, but it doesn't make me infallible. I've made plenty of mistakes, some that got people hurt, others that nearly got the universe destroyed. The universe. Mikasa interjected skeptically, having silently joined their conversation. Ben smiled wryly. Different scales, same principle. Your world has titans, mine has alien conquerors and interdimensional tyrants. The weight of responsibility feels the same no matter what you're fighting. Something in his words seemed to resonate with both Eren and Mikasa, creating a moment of quiet understanding between them. The conversation lapsed into reflective silence as the formation continued its grim retreat toward the walls. Hours later, as the sun began to set, Walrose appeared on the horizon, a massive stone sentinel promising temporary safety. Ben had never imagined he'd feel relief at the sight of confinement, but after a day beyond the walls, the prospect of protection from constant Titan threat was undeniably welcome. The surviving scouts passed through the gate in somber procession, met by crowds of civilians. Unlike the heroic welcome Ben might have expected, the reception was mixed. Some faces showed reverence and gratitude, others displayed open contempt and mockery. "Why do they look at you like that?" Ben asked Armin, who rode nearby. "The scout regiment is controversial," Armin explained quietly. "Many citizens view our expedition as wasteful suicide missions that squander resources and lives. They don't understand that without pushing beyond the walls, humanity has no future." As they rode through the town, Ben noticed signs of economically stratified society, the outer districts showing signs of poverty and struggle, while the inner areas appeared more prosperous. The class divisions reminded him uncomfortably of conditions on some alien worlds he'd visited. They finally reached Scout Regiment headquarters as darkness fell. Soldiers dispersed to rest, mourn, and recover, while Ben found himself summoned to Erwin's office along with key officers and Eren. The commander's office reflected his personality, austere, organized, and focused entirely on function over comfort. Maps covered the walls, and a scale model of the walled territories dominated the center table. The 57th expedition resulted in 38% casualties, Erwin began without preamble. A significant loss, yet not without strategic value. We confirmed the existence of another human capable of Titan transformation, one with combat training and specific objectives regarding both Eren Yeager and Ben Tennyson. But we failed to capture her, Levi noted coldly, and lost my entire squad in the process. A painful setback, Erwin acknowledged, but not our final opportunity. The female Titan will act again, her mission remains unfulfilled. You say that like it's a good thing, Ben observed. It is, Erwin replied with cold calculation. An enemy compelled to act as an enemy who can be anticipated and trapped. Our next encounter will occur on our terms, not hers. You have a plan, Hange concluded. The beginnings of one, Erwin confirmed. But first, we must understand what the female Titan wants with each of you. He looked between Eren and Ben. Yeager's Titan abilities have obvious strategic value. Tennyson's device, however, represents an unknown quantity even to us. All eyes turned to Ben and the Proto-Omnitrix on his wrist. The Omnitrix was created to preserve DNA samples of every sentient species in the universe, Ben explained. It allows the wearer to transform into any of these species temporarily, accessing their natural abilities and strengths. In my world, it's probably the most powerful device ever created. And potentially capable of preserving Titan DNA, Hange theorized, eyes widening. If enemy possesses knowledge of the device's capabilities, they might see it as a means of preserving Titan powers beyond human hosts. Or replicating them, Armin added quietly. Imagine an army of Titan shifters created through this technology. The implications silenced the room momentarily. If that's true, Levi finally said, then keeping the device out of enemy hands becomes our highest priority, even above capturing the female Titan. Not necessarily, Erwin countered. If we can identify and capture the human within the female Titan, we gain both intelligence about our enemy's object lives and potentially the ability to lure others of their kind into the open. Ben listened to the strategic discussion with growing discomfort. The clinical way they discussed using him and Eren as it reminded him of how the plumbers sometimes treated him, as a strategic asset rather than a person. I should point out, he interrupted, that the Omnitrix has safeguards. It can't be removed without my cooperation, and it's programmed to self-destruct if someone tries to forcibly extract its DNA database. Self-destruct? Hange asked with scientific curiosity. At what yield? Enough to take out a large portion of a galaxy. Ben stated matter-of-factly. The room went silent again, this time with stunned disbelief. That's not possible, Armin finally said. No device could contain that much energy. Interdimensional technology operating on principles beyond our current understanding, Hange mused. We can't dismiss the claim simply because it exceeds our scientific framework. Irwin's calculating gaze never left Ben. Regardless of its destructive potential, the device clearly possesses capabilities our enemy covets. That makes you, Tennyson, both an invaluable asset and a primary target. Story of my life, Ben muttered. Effective immediately, you will be integrated into Levi's new squad alongside Irwin continued. Your movements will be restricted to secure areas. And you will be under constant supervision. So I'm basically a prisoner, Ben concluded. You're a protected asset, Irwin corrected. One whose cooperation I hope we can count on. Ben considered his options. He could resist, transform, and attempt to find his own way in this world, but to what end? Without understanding how the Omnitrix had brought him here, he had no clear path home. And despite their calculating pragmatism, these people were fighting for humanity's survival against overwhelming odds. How could he not help? Fine, he agreed finally. But I want something in return. You're hardly in a position to negotiate. Levi pointed out. Maybe not, Ben conceded. But I'm guessing you'd rather have my willing cooperation than have to work around my resistance. So here's my condition. I want access to whatever scientific resources you have. If I'm going to figure out how to get home, I need to understand how the Omnitrix interacts with Titan energy. Irwin and Hange exchanged glances. Granted, Irwin decided. Section Commander Hange will provide full access to our research facilities and findings on Titan biology. In return, you will submit to comprehensive testing of your transformative abilities and share technical knowledge of your device. Deal, Ben agreed. The meeting concluded shortly thereafter, with Levi instructed to establish new headquarters for the reconstituted special squad. As they filed out, Ben found himself walking alongside Irwin, both of them processing their new status as highly valued, highly restricted assets. Does it ever get easier? Irwin asked suddenly, being treated like a weapon instead of a person. Ben considered the question seriously. Not easier. You just get better at remembering that you're more than what they see you as. Irwin nodded thoughtfully. I never wanted this power, you know. I just wanted to kill Titans, to make them pay for what they did to my mother, to humanity. Nobody asks for power, Ben replied, thinking back to that fateful summer day when he found the Omnitrix in the woods. It just finds people who might do something worthwhile with it. Or something terrible, Irwin added grimly. That too, Ben acknowledged. That's why the choices we make matter so much. Their conversation was interrupted by a messenger who approached at a run, saluting sharply before addressing Levi. Captain, military police representatives have arrived with orders from the capital. They're demanding immediate custody of both Irwin Yeager and Ben Tennyson. Levi's expression didn't change, but his posture subtly shifted to something more alert. More dangerous. On whose authority? The royal government, sir. They cite concerns over unregulated transformative abilities and potential internal security threats as justification. How predictably opportunistic, Levi remarked dryly. Inform them that both subjects are under Scout Regiment jurisdiction by direct order of Commander-in-Chief Zackley. NY transfer of custody requires his explicit approval. The messenger hesitated. Sir, they've brought a significant force. At least 30 MPs, including several high-ranking officers. Attempting to intimidate us with numbers. Levi concluded, unimpressed. Tell Irwin the vultures have arrived earlier than expected. As the messenger departed, Ben exchanged glances with Irwin. I'm guessing this is bad. The military police serve the interior government, Irwin explained tersely. They've wanted me in their custody since my Titan abilities were discovered, preferably dissected rather than alive. And now they want both of us. Ben concluded. Great. It was inevitable, Levi stated. Power attracts those who wish to control it. The question is whether they're acting independently or being directed by our actual enemy. You think the female Titan has connections inside the government? Ben asked. I think, Levi replied carefully, that any enemy capable of infiltrating our military With Titan shifters would be foolish not to have influence in other strategic positions. The implications were chilling. Not just external enemies, but potentially a conspiracy reaching into the highest levels of this society. Ben had faced similar situations before with the Forever Knights and their infiltration of Earth governments, but the stakes here seemed even more dire. So what do we do? Eren asked, hands clenching into fists at his sides. For now, nothing, Levi instructed. Erwin will handle the political maneuvering. Our priority is securing you both at the new headquarters location. Before they could move, however, the courtyard erupted with activity as a contingent of military police entered, led by a tall man with a receding hairline and cold eyes. His uniform indicated high rank, and his bearing suggested someone accustomed to unquestioned authority. Captain Levi, the man called out, his voice carrying across the courtyard. I am Commander Nile Dok of the Military Police Brigade. I have orders for the immediate transfer of Eren Yeager and the unidentified transforming individual to interior custody. Levi stepped forward, his small stature belying the dangerous aura he projected. Unfortunately, Commander, both individuals are under Scout Regiment protection by order of Commander-in-Chief Zackley. Perhaps you'd like to take the matter up with him directly. Nile's expression soured. This is a matter of internal security that supersedes normal jurisdictional considerations. The capital has received reports of unauthorized Titan transformations and unknown biological threats within Wall Rose. How fascinating, Levi replied with deadly calm. And how convenient that these concerns arise immediately following a scout expedition during which we encountered an enemy Titan shifter. The tension between the two officers was palpable, drawing attention from soldiers throughout the courtyard. Ben noticed Mikasa and Armin positioning themselves strategically nearby, ready to intervene if necessary. The subject is not open to debate, Captain, Nile insisted. My orders come directly from the royal government. And mine come from Commander Erwin and the Supreme Military Commander. Levi countered. Unless you plan to stage a coup against established chain of command, I suggest you reconsider your position. The standoff might have escalated further had Commander Erwin not arrived, his commanding presence immediately drawing all attention. Commander Dok, Erwin greeted with perfect military courtesy. I see you've traveled all the way from the interior. Had you sent word of your visit, we could have prepared appropriate accommodations. Nile's expression indicated he wasn't fooled by Erwin's superficial politeness. This isn't a social call, Erwin. I have orders to take custody of Yeager and the unknown shifter. Ah, you mean our interdimensional visitor, Erwin replied smoothly. Ben Tennyson, whose technological capabilities have already proven invaluable against the Titan threat. Ben noticed the strategic framing, presenting him as a technological asset rather than a biological unknown, potentially complicating the military police's justification for custody. Interdimensional, Nile repeated skeptically. Another of your convenient fictions, Erwin. Hardly, Erwin replied. Section Commander Hange has extensive documentation of Mr. Tennyson's origins and capabilities, all of which has been submitted to Commander-in-Chief Zackley as required by protocol. The mention of documentation and proper protocols caused visible hesitation in Nile's demeanor. Ben recognized the political chess game being played. Erwin had anticipated this move and prepared countermeasures. This matter will be settled at a formal hearing, Wynn continued with unassailable reasonableness. Until then, both individuals remain under Scout Regiment custody as previously authorized. I'm sure you understand the importance of maintaining proper military procedure during sensitive security situations. Nile clearly recognized when he'd been outmaneuvered, at least temporarily. A hearing will indeed be arranged, Erwin. Until then, be aware that the interior government is watching your actions very closely. Any unauthorized transformations or movements outside secured areas will result in immediate intervention. Your concern for proper procedure is noted. Erwin replied with perfect politeness. Captain Levi will ensure our guests remain within authorized areas. With the bureaucratic equivalent of a strategic retreat, Nile and his military police contingent departed. Though Ben noticed they established observation positions around the scout headquarters, not even pretending they weren't conducting surveillance. That could have gone worse. Ben observed once the immediate tension had dissipated. It's merely postponed, Erwin corrected. The military police's interest confirms our suspicions, powerful elements within the Gover N meant consider both you and Aren threats to be contained rather than assets to be utilized. Are they working with whoever sent the female Titan? Aren suggested darkly. Possibly both, Erwin acknowledged. The situation necessitates accelerating our timetable. Levi, prepare your squad for immediate relocation to the fallback position. Hange, gather essential research materials. You'll continue your work at the secure facility. As the scout leadership dispersed to execute these orders, Ben found himself momentarily alone with Mikasa, who had approached silently during the confrontation. You handled that well, she observed, her usual stoic expression briefly showing approval. Most people become intimidated when caught between military factions. Ben shrugged. Not my first political standoff. Back home, I've dealt with everything from alien diplomats to government agencies trying to get control of the Omnitrix. Mikasa studied him with newfound interest. You're more experienced than you appear. I get that a lot. Ben replied with a half smile. People see a teenager and assume I'm just some kid who doesn't know what he's doing. I don't, Mikasa stated simply. Not anymore. The unexpected acknowledgement from someone as reserved and judicious with praise as Mikasa caught Ben by surprise. Before he could respond, however, they were interrupted by a cheerful voice. There you are. Sasha Browse approached, carrying a small bundle. I've been looking everywhere for you. Unlike many of the Scout Regiment members, whose interactions with Ben remained cautious and professional, Sasha had demonstrated immediate and unguarded friendliness from their first meeting. Her perpetual enthusiasm about food and survival skills reminded Ben somewhat of his cousin Gwen in her more relaxed moments. Brought you something, she announced, unwrapping the bundle to reveal several small pastries. Cook was throwing these out because they're from yesterday, but they're still perfectly good. Thanks, Ben said, genuinely appreciative of both the gesture and the break intention. He took one of the offered pastries, noticing with amusement how Sasha's eyes followed the movement with intense focus. You can have another one if you want, he offered, correctly interpreting her expression. Really? Sasha's face lit up with disproportionate joy. Most people guard their food around me for some reason. Can't imagine why, Mikasa commented dryly, the barest hint of affection softening her tone. Sasha happily claimed another pastry, seemingly oblivious to the earlier military confrontation. So what's happening? Everyone's rushing around like Titans just breached the wall. Political complications, Mikasa explained succinctly. We're relocating to a secure location. Oh, that's actually why I came to find you, Sasha remembered. Captain Levi said to tell Ben to pack whatever he needs. We leave at dawn for the old scout headquarters. Old headquarters? Ben questioned. A castle in the remote forests within Wall Rose, Mikasa explained. Abandoned years ago due to its impractical location, but useful now precisely because it's difficult to approach undetected. Sounds perfect for hiding from both Titans and suspicious government officials, Ben observed. Sasha nodded enthusiastically. The forest around it is perfect for hunting too. Much better game than near the main walls. I could show you sometime. I'm the best hunter in the 104th Training Corps. Her unabashed self-promotion made Ben smile. Unlike the deadly serious Mikasa or the scientifically obsessed Hange, Sasha's straightforward enthusiasm for simple pleasures was refreshingly normal in this world of constant existential threat. I'd like that, Ben replied. Though fair warning, I'm terrible at anything requiring actual outdoor skills. My grandpa tried teaching me for years. That's okay, Sasha assured him. I can teach anyone. Even Jean learned how to set basic snares, and he's practically useless outside of ODM gear. I should prepare for tomorrow, Mikasa interjected, her brief moment of casual interaction closing as she returned to her typically efficient demeanor. Aren will need protection during transit. As she departed, Sasha leaned closer to Ben. She's always like that about Aren, she explained in a stage whisper. Super intense and protective. The rest of you,'s just try to stay out of her way when she's in guardian mode. I've noticed, Ben replied, thinking about the similarities between Mikasa's devotion to Aren and his own cousin Gwen's occasional overprotectiveness. They've been through a lot together, I'm guessing. They saw their hometown destroyed by Titans as kids, Sasha confirmed, her usual cheerfulness dimming. Most of us have similar stories. That's why we joined the military. Nowhere else to go, really. The casual revelation of such widespread trauma caught Ben off guard. He sometimes forgot that behind the military discipline and specialized skills, these soldiers were mostly teenagers who had lost everything to the Titans. "What about you?" he asked. "What's your story?" Sasha's expression became uncharacteristically serious. "My village was in the mountains, hunting folk, mostly. When food got scarce after Wal Maria fell, the government forced us to abandon our hunting traditions and convert all land to farming. My father accepted it, but I couldn't stand watching our way of life disappear. So I enlisted, partly to send money home, partly because I couldn't bear to watch." The personal history, shared without self-pity or drama, offered Ben a glimpse into the complex social disruption caused by the Titans beyond just the direct attacks. "That's a lot to deal with," Ben said inadequately. Sasha's sunny disposition returned almost immediately. "Everyone has their reasons for fighting. Some are complicated, like Eren wanting to destroy all Titans, or Armin wanting to see the ocean. Mine's simple. I want to make sure everyone has enough food and no one goes hungry again." Her straightforward idealism, centered around such a basic human need, struck Ben as profoundly admirable in its simplicity. While others fought for complex ideological or personal motivations, Sasha's goal was immediately tangible and universally beneficial. "That's actually pretty great," Ben told her sincerely. "Sometimes the most important goals are the most basic ones." Sasha beamed at the validation. "Exactly. Now come on, we should get you packed. Captain Levi is super strict about departure schedules, and trust me, you do not want to be the reason we're delayed." As they headed toward the barracks, Ben noticed Annie Lenhart watching them from the shadows of a nearby building, her expression unreadable. When their eyes met, she didn't look away or acknowledge the contact, simply maintaining her cold, assessing gaze until they passed from view. "What's the deal with Annie?" Ben asked Sasha as they walked. "She seems different from the rest of you." "Annie." Sasha considered the question. "She graduated from our training corps but joined the military police instead of the scouts. She's amazing at hand-to-hand combat, but keeps to herself mostly." "Why? Did she say something to you?" "Not exactly," Ben replied, thinking about their earlier conversation and Annie's warning about unknowns being potential threats. "Just trying to understand the dynamics here." "Well, she's not usually around Scout headquarters," Sasha noted. "Must be here on official military police business, though that's strange since Commander Dok just left." The observation triggered something in Ben's mind, a pattern he couldn't quite identify but felt intuitively important. Annie's presence at Scout headquarters, her interest in the Omnitrix, the female Titan's similar interest, the timing of the military police intervention. Before he could pursue the thought further, they arrived at the barracks where Ben had been assigned temporary quarters. The room contained the few possessions he had in this world, mostly items provided by the Scout regiment, including spare uniforms, basic toiletries, and a notebook Hange had given I.M. to record observations about his transformations. "Doesn't take long to pack when you arrived with nothing but the clothes on your back," Ben observed wryly as he gathered the meager belongings. "That's the Scout way," Sasha declared with inappropriate cheerfulness. "Travel light, die heavy." "Is that an actual Scout regiment saying?" Ben asked incredulously. Sasha laughed. "No, but maybe it should be. Captain Levi would hate it. Which makes it even better." Her irreverent humor in the face of their grim reality was surprisingly refreshing. Ben found himself laughing along, the tension of the day's events momentarily lifting. As night fell over the Scout headquarters, final preparations for the next day's relocation continued. Ben stood at the window of his quarters, watching the activity below. The military police observers remained at their posts, maintaining surveillance of all movements in and out of the compound. A soft knock at his door preceded Armin's entrance. The intelligent blonde carried a small stack of books and papers. "Hange thought you might want these," he explained, placing the materials on the desk. "Basic texts on Titan biology and historical records of the walls. And this," he handed over a sealed envelope, "is from Commander Irwin, for your eyes only." "Thanks," Ben replied, curious about the secretive communication. Armin hesitated before leaving. "May I ask you something?" "Sure," Ben invited, setting aside the envelope temporarily. "Your world, the one you came from. What's it like to live without the constant threat of Titans?" Without walls. The question carried such profound longing that Ben found himself momentarily speechless. How could he describe a world of open skies, global travel, and despite its many problems, fundamental freedom fr. Own the kind of existential cage these people inhabited? It's normal for us, Ben finally said. People go about their lives without constantly looking over their shoulders. They travel wherever they want, build cities without walls, plan for futures that don't revolve around survival. It sounds like a dream, Armin said quietly. We have old books describing oceans, deserts, mountains, places beyond the walls that most people will never see. Places I've always wanted to visit. The ocean is amazing, Ben told him, remembering summers at the beach with Gwen and Grandpa Max. Nothing but water stretching to the horizon. Constantly moving, never the same twice. Armin's eyes shone with wonder and determination. We'll see it someday. That's what Eren and I promised each other as children. No matter what it takes. We'll reach the ocean. The simple dream, so modest compared to the intergalactic adventures Ben had experienced, nonetheless carried profound weight in this confined world. I hope you do, Ben said sincerely. And I hope I can help make that possible while I'm here. After Armin left, Ben opened the sealed envelope from Commander Erwin. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a brief message. Trust no one completely. Our enemy may wear a familiar face. If forced to choose between cooperation and preserving your device, choose the latter. Humanity's future may depend on it. The cryptic warning sent a chill down Ben's spine. Erwin suspected a traitor close to them, someone who might try to force Ben to surrender the Omnitrix. The commander's willingness to prioritize the device's security over Ben's cooperation with authorities suggested he believed the threat was imminent and serious. Ben burned the note as instructed at the bottom, watching the paper curl and blacken in the small lantern flame. As the ashes dispersed, he looked down at the Proto-Omnitrix on his wrist. In his own world, the device had made him a hero, a protector, sometimes a target. Here, it might represent something even more significant, a technological anomaly that could tip the balance in humanity's desperate struggle for survival. Quite a responsibility for a watch, he murmured to himself, echoing words his grandfather had once said to him. Outside, the last light faded from the sky, plunging the world into darkness broken only by scattered lanterns. Somewhere beyond those lights, beyond the walls, Titans roamed freely, and within the walls, hidden enemies watched and waited, their motives still shrouded in mystery. Dawn would bring movement, relocation, and likely new challenges. But for now, Ben Tennyson, hero of Earth, wielder of the Omnitrix, and unexpected visitor to a world besieged by giants, allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection before the next chapter of this strange journey began. ___. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.